This podcast is brought to you by TeamTrade, a digital solution that helps you hire, optimize, and retain employees. Using psychometric assessments to identify more than 100 professional mindset traits, it gives instant reports you can use to build high-performing teams. Get 2 free profiles today, no commitment, no credit card required, at teamtrait.com. TeamTrait.com. Welcome to the Manage Smarter podcast with hosts C. Lee Smith and Audrey Strong. We're glad you're here for discussions on new ways to manage smarter, hire, develop, and retain talent, improve results, and propel team performance to new heights. This is the Manage Smarter podcast.
All right, we're post-COVID, and some of us are going back to the office, and some of us are hybrid, and some of us are fully back to the office, and some of us are still remote. But really, it's a new worldly, and sustaining a world-class remote culture is kind of what our guest today says is the way things seem to be going. She's an expert in this. Amazing. Can't wait to talk to her.
In the life cycle of our company at Salesforce, we started off as a completely remote organization. And we were that way for the first 10 years. Back before it was cool, we actually had to hide the fact
90s.
that we were fully remote. And so we actually had to get an office address and everything like that so people wouldn't think that we were some fly-by-night. And then as we grew, we became, we all came into an office, and we've had some really cool office space over the years. And then COVID happened, and now we're going back the other direction where we are now mostly remote. So, and I don't know that that life cycle is all that different from what other companies are experiencing. And there are some unique challenges in trying to build a cohesive team that works and plays well together, when most, if not all, the people are remote. So this is a great topic today.
It's a great topic, and we're so glad you're all here listening to the Manage Smarter podcast. My name is Audrey Strong. I'm the Senior Vice President of Communications here at SalesFuel.
And I'm C. Lee Smith. I'm the founder and CEO of SalesFuel.
And so Marjorie Hook, Vice President of People and Culture for Openly, is our guest today, and she is focused on the employee life cycle and sustaining a world-class remote culture. Prior to joining Openly in 2022, Marjorie spent more than 15 years leading people functions for both large tech and high-growth tech startups. She's also got extensive consulting experience leading global organizations through business transformations. She's got a Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt, University of Texas alumni, lives in beautiful Frisco, Colorado with her partner, 2 dogs, tennis player, and obviously you must be a skier. Right.
I am a skier. Yes,
okay.
Absolutely.
Well, welcome to the show, Marjorie. So where do we start? I mean, is it predominantly now more remote, or is it going hybrid? Like we're in a snapshot in time right now in 2024 as we talk. What's the landscape look like?
So I think it's interesting. I mean, we enjoy a fully remote environment, and that was very intentional for Openly. But I do stay on top of what's happening in the industry, and there are a lot of companies that are finding success in the hybrid model now as well.
So I want to go back to what I led in with. So there are a lot of managers and leaders and that have gotten used to having people into an office, and so they would manage by walking around and actually observing people and being able to go and stop in somebody's office and have a stand-up conversation with them and everything like that. And now they have to get used to this whole different way of management because they can't do that, physically, like they used to. So what advice would you have for managers or leaders now that have to make that transition and basically learn a new way of managing a new management style?
Oh, that's a great question, Lee. The first thing that you have to really double down on is connection, really helping your employees get to know one another, feel comfortable having conversations, building trust. And so we focus very heavily on finding as many opportunities for our employees to connect and do that as possible. You also have to have a lot of information that is very clearly understood, foundational information like your company values and expectations for how people behave in the work environment, even if it's in a remote setting. Goals and priorities are incredibly clear because you can't just go to the person in the cube next door and ask what they're working on or how that ties to what you have going on. So you've got to really have clear goals. Everything has to be a little bit more explicit, I think. Having written records of what what individuals are doing and what teams are doing, really important as well. Using collaboration tools so that you can have both asynchronous and synchronous work happening at the same time. So there are a lot of strategies that can make that very effective, but they have to be very intentional. It won't happen organically if you're moving into a remote environment for the first time.
It's
Yeah.
funny you had mentioned something like Slack. We had a new employee come in many years ago, back when Slack was just getting started, whatever. She introduced us to Slack, and then she would go on and get in these arguments on Slack. And at what point does a manager have to step in? I mean, what are the signals to a manager that, okay, we need to end this text-based conversation. This is not a text-based conversation. This needs to be a voice-to-voice or person-to-person conversation, because we're either talking past each other, or we're flaming each other, or people are misreading what someone else said, or they can't hear the tone because it's in text. So how does a manager navigate that?
Another great question. One of the things that we do that helps us is we have standards for how we use Slack, and we've given our employees training about the importance of tone. And I think most people in the Slack environment use a lot of emojis these days, and those don't always mean the same thing to different people. We've also had to set some standards around what kinds of things are appropriate for exchanges in Slack and when that doesn't actually work. So for instance, decision making, when it's any kind of a larger decision, Slack is not a good place for that to happen. That is better, hop on a Zoom call, or if you happen to be in person together, that would be great. But smaller things, like just in terms of quick information gathering or information sharing or check-ins, those work really well in that environment. But you do really have to set the standards. And if a manager does see or hear about something that didn't come across as intended or had a negative unintended consequence, a conversation typically works. I mean, that's usually when anything like that happens, it wasn't intended to cause any kind of a problem, and so usually just take a step back, think about how that might have been perceived and what you could do differently
That
the
has to be
next
a
time.
private conversation, though. It can't be in front of an audience.
Oh, absolutely, a private conversation. Yes.
I have a question. So from a work
Yeah.
product, you talk about KPIs. Look, if somebody's not getting their work done, we'll know it because you're not delivering work product. But I
Right.
would like to know, for people who are skeptical about going all remote, what are like your top 3 red flags that somebody is, I'm not saying they're walking down the hall and playing Xbox when they should be in a meeting, but one of my things is, look, if you're in a Zoom meeting, have your camera on. I can't stand it when people are sitting there with their camera off. You don't seem engaged, but what are your top flags for people to look at? Like, maybe we need to talk about more guidelines.
Absolutely. So having your camera on is absolutely one, and we do that at Openly all of the time. Setting an expectation that when you do have an online meeting, a Zoom meeting, that people show up on time. We happen to be great about that. Some other things that you might see is we always provide our employees opportunities to ask questions, share ideas. Even at the end of a big all hands, we always allow time for that. You'll notice over time who's participating and who is not participating. Or that might happen in a smaller meeting. If you've got some folks that are staying very quiet, that's a signal that people may not be as engaged as you'd like them to be.
Mm-hmm. Lee, do we want to talk about our employee Darby? So he works out of Taiwan.
Well, you should be. We have some unique challenges there by
Yes.
having it's one thing to have people in Columbus and Denver
Dallas.
at one point, Dallas and everything like that. Because but those time zones are only like, okay, you're behind an hour, you're behind 2 hours. Darby in Taiwan is a unique
12
situation,
hours.
right, Odd? Yeah.
Yeah, but Marjorie, it's interesting because I have him in the central time zone till about noon. For handoff and work product back and forth, and to talk to him and get him aligned before he goes off for his beauty sleep. But the beauty of it is when I hand him stuff at the end of my day, he's getting up and I have a 24-hour department. But what we do find sometimes is that we have to over communicate on task and deadline and things like that.
And when we schedule meetings too, we pretty much can only have a meeting in the morning. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we do the same. And we have employees across the entire United States. And so
Mhm.
we have core working hours where there's overlap between all the time zones. We have a concentration of employees on the East Coast. So there's typically some work that starts earlier. But people tend to use the end caps of their day because of this, for work that you have to get done. And then that middle part of your day can be for the people that you need to connect with live.
That makes sense. What about these
Mhm.
social hubs? Lee and I were reading
Oh,
up. Is
yes.
that one of your tips? And how do I create one? And what is it?
Oh, yeah. So we call them culture hubs, and
Okay.
we're having great success with it so far. How do you do it? So we actually did an analysis of our employees. We have employees in 43 states. So we did an analysis of where they were relative to any of the bigger cities. We have a contract with a co-working space that has offices across the United States, and so we actually mapped out where those were relative to where the employees were living to try to figure out who had a reasonable commute into one of those co-working spaces. And so from there, we picked the 12 cities where that we had at least 6 people that could,
Oh,
with
wow.
a reasonable commute, come in periodically. And we got volunteers for a champion for each one of those regions, each one of those offices, culture hubs, and then they have a budget. And what they're asked to do is find ways that culture, that microculture region wants to connect. And so you might have people that are coming in together to on the day that we have an all hands, and then they're just going to work together in the office that day. Or just last week in Akron, Ohio, we had that local culture hub group get together and do an afternoon at a food bank, because we also really support our employees with paid service hours every year. And then once on the back end, once these events happen, then you want to share the photos and have people share the quotes, because there's so much intrinsic value that comes from that connection. And what I love most about it is it's typically a fairly random group of people who happen to live in that area. So it's not one function. It is not people of any certain level in the organization. It is just whoever happens to live nearby, and you just create another level of connection and a sort of a secondary cultural identity. And our employees are loving that so far. It's been so much fun.
So I can
Wow.
totally see how
Yeah.
that works from the micro team, perspective. So how do you bring those micro teams? So, I mean, you mentioned
Oh,
photos and,
yeah.
and sharing everything like that, but I mean, what else can you do as far as building a cohesive team across all of these regions? Because that's one of the things I think that a lot of managers and leaders are concerned about is like, it was so easy when we were in the office. We could have a happy hour. We would have monthly birthday parties. We would all get together and do a Halloween party or something like that. Whereas we can't really do that anymore.
Mm-hmm. We still do some of it. There are a lot of companies now that are offering online versions of that, so you can get folks together and do an online cooking class. Or I
Mm,
think last year we made cake pops together
that
and
sounds like
kind of
fun.
yes, different events
Sign
like
me
that where
up.
the materials are sent in advance and everyone is doing that online at the same time. I think that really works. We're also trying something else. We just started this year, and so far it's really working, which is teams still get together for offsites. That's really important. It's a part of our connection model. So what we decided to do is this year we picked 4 locations, one each quarter, and we said, hey, listen, if you're going to have a team offsite, go to this city on this day. And when all the teams that are having the offsites go to that location, they get this organic connection opportunity together. So you may be in conference room A working with your team or your function, but next to you is another team or function that you probably work with cross-functionally to some
Mhm.
extent. And you get to eat lunch with them or do things with them in the evening. And that's worked really, really well for us. I think next year we're actually going to just move to 3 different cities. So we'll do one every 4 months. But that's been great. So just really very thoughtfully thinking about how do we get our folks together in person? How do we get folks together who don't often talk together, to meet one another, develop trust, understand how you're contributing to our overall strategy, and employees love that.
What I think I hear you saying is that the manager who flies by the seat of their pants is going to be really challenged by managing a remote team because it seems like it requires a much higher level of organization,
Mm.
logistics, communication, and advanced thought.
That is very definitely true. And we make these decisions together as a company. So if you're a manager, even when you're coming in through onboarding, you're going to learn about the mechanisms that we have in that whole framework that we have for remote success. And then you'll be encouraged to do that.
And I'm guessing then too, when you hire a manager, whatever, you're looking for their ability to have concrete organization, and they have a certain level of strategic thinking and that they have to bring to the table, or else they're just not going to work there.
Oh, absolutely. And you have to find people who build relationships easily, and who have hopefully had success doing that in a virtual environment, because like anything else, takes a little bit more work. Every once in a while, you do need to reach out to a colleague and just say, "Hey, just checking in. How are you doing?"
Yeah, I do that. I mean, if I haven't had an interaction with somebody in a different department for a while, I go, "Hey, how are you?" You
Right.
know, long time no talk. One of the things we wanted to ask you when you talked about employees that aren't engaged or um, employees that are misbehaving is having uncomfortable conversations. Um, some managers might love the fact that they can do this over Zoom because they don't want to do it with the person sitting right in front of them with their eyeballs looking right into your eyeballs. What is the new way to do that effectively where the message gets through, and how is it different on Zoom versus when you're sitting right in front of me?
It's a great question. You have to be more observant, right? So you're not
Ah,
seeing as much of the nonverbal communication, and it is unfortunately it's very easy for someone to smile through a 30-minute meeting when they're just dying inside. And when you're in person with
oh,
someone, you can
wow.
see that, but on a Zoom
Mhm.
call, you can't necessarily do that. So you have to be a little bit more observant. I think some of the tips for success there are, don't launch right into the difficult conversation. Spend a little time, just connecting, and then find a soft way to bring that up. Understand that, if you were having a conversation in person, sometimes people need to hear or participate in something and take a little time and go process. And if when you're in a Zoom environment, I feel like it makes people feel like, hey, this is a 30-minute meeting. I have to stay on this meeting for 30 minutes. But it's okay if you're having an uncomfortable conversation and just want to give someone time to process something and come back. That's more effective. So you really want to try to kind of replicate the space that people would have in an in-person setting in that Zoom call.
Are there
Well, that
specific instances when it absolutely has to be in person? Just I'm asking for the audience, what's the
mm,
guideline?
As a general rule, if you're having a difficult conversation and you can get together in person, great. I would not recommend that you do that if you're all at a conference, for instance,
Yeah.
but if you can meet in one of the co-working spaces, or if you are together for another reason, for another meeting, sometimes that can be really effective. But it doesn't always have to be that way. I mean, you do have to understand that if you're in a remote environment, sometimes you're going to have the difficult conversation on Zoom, and it's okay. You can still be effective. Just have to
Okay.
plan for it a little differently.
and you have to do it on Zoom. You can't be a chicken shit and do it by email or do it by
No,
text because that just makes it
no,
worse.
that's,
Oh my.
you don't want to add those layers of complexity. Yeah.
The
Yeah, and you
amount
really
of
don't
times
want
that
and you
happens
really
is
don't want the
scary.
documentation either, right?
Right.
Gosh. Well, your website is openly.com. We've got a few minutes left. Lee, do you have a final question for Marjorie?
I do. It's like one of the things that we learned during COVID is that your better employees actually work harder and they work longer, and all of a sudden they lose track of time, and all of a sudden now it's 7 o'clock and they look up and it's like, oh wow, I'm still working, because you don't see the cues of people packing up and leaving the
Oh
office
yeah,
and like that telling
true.
you it's time to leave. And so what I'm concerned about there though is the impact of or yeah, I'm not so much concerned about, but curious about is, are we seeing higher levels of burnout because of more remote work? And what can managers do then to recognize the signs of depression or stress, anxiety, burnout, and everything like that to really keep their finger on the pulse of the employee's mental health? And then what would you recommend them do about it?
Yeah, that's great. And yes, you definitely see higher levels of burnout, I think, in a virtual environment. I've even heard that described as loneliness. Some of our employees,
Mhm.
they start to feel lonely, and so once again, you have to look closely at someone's face, look into their eyes, look at their body language, listen to the words that they're saying. Do you hear the passion and excitement in their voice, or are they really, sounding tired? Look at their posture. I mean, those are all indications that someone is really struggling. And if there's any inkling that there is a mental health challenge, we use our business partners as good strategic partners to the business, so that when we even suspect something, we are prepared to provide resources or have conversations to help someone through that. Because if you're sitting in an office, or if you're sitting in your home office by yourself all day, and there's no one there to really check in with you in person, you want to give them the chance.
I
Audrey,
talk
you
to the
remember the one
dog and the
employee-
cats all day. That's my
Right.
babbling.
Well, yeah.
Right.
Do you remember the one employee we had, Audrey, that would attend the meetings or whatever and be laying on the sofa?
Yes.
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
a difficult conversation. I
totally
had to
laid
have.
out. Just, it's just all about my comfort, not the content of this
I'm surprised he
meeting.
didn't have a martini in one hand.
Well, maybe he did. I don't know.
Right, you just didn't see it.
Marjorie, this has been great. And it's Marjorie Hook on your LinkedIn. And everybody, she spells her first name Marjorie. And openly.com is the website. I think we've done a fine job on Zoom with this. There have been no issues.
That's right. We all love each other.
Thanks for being on the show, Marjorie. We appreciate it.
Oh, really appreciate it. It was wonderful speaking with you, and have a fantastic day.
You too.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and recommend on iTunes, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more great information at salesfuel.com.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.